Hi, welcome back. Our previous lesson was on the first part of budget constraint. Today, we'll be moving on to the second part. So, a budget constraint is a representation of the bundles among which a consumer may choose given her income and the prices of the goods that she faces. So, we're going to use the information in the budget constraint to draw our budget line. So, before we do that, we recall from our previous lesson that we said that a typical budget constraint is written as the price of good X multiplied by the quantity of good X that a consumer buys plus the price of good Y multiplied by the quantity of good Y that a consumer buys. So this bit is the total expenditure on good X and this bit is the total expenditure on good Y. If we assume that the consumer does not borrow or save, then it means that the total expenditure on good X plus the total expenditure on good Y should be equal to the income that the consumer gets. Now, this is also assuming that good X and good Y are the only two goods that the consumer buys in the market. Now, using this budget constraint, we also mentioned previously that if the consumer does not buy any of good X and spends all their income buying Y, this brings our equation to just PY equals I because the X bit is now 0. So the maximum of good Y that a consumer can buy if they do not buy any of good X is simply the income that they get divided by the price of good Y. Now, in the same case, if the consumer does not buy any of good Y and they spend all their income buying good X, this brings our equation to PX X equals I. And the maximum amount of good eggs that any consumer can buy if they do not buy any of good Y is the income that they get divided by the price of good eggs. So we are going to be using these two conditions to draw our budget line. Now let's move on to the budget line. Let's assume a consumer called Ella who spends the income of £100 per week on two goods, rice and pasta. So we have rice as the x-axis and then pasta at the y-axis. So assume that the price of rice is £5 and then the price of pasta is £10. Now, using these two conditions, since rice is good X in this case, the maximum amount of rice that a consumer can buy if they do not buy any pasta at all is the income that they get, which is 100 in this case, divided by the price of good X, which is 5. So this is 20. And then the maximum amount of good Y, which is pasta in this case, that Ella can buy if she does not buy any good X, is 100 divided by the price of good Y, which is 10. So this brings us to 10. So the first thing we note when we are drawing the budget line is the intercept. So the intercept here and there tells us the maximum amount of each good that Ella can buy if she doesn't buy any of the other good. So for good X, the maximum amount is 20. So we have 20 here on the x-axis. And then for good Y, the maximum amount is 10. So we have 10 here on the y-axis. Now, if you connect these 2 points, which is 10 and 20, you can have your budget line, which is represented as B1 in this example. As we mentioned in our previous lesson, Ella can buy any quantity of X and Y that she wants within her budget. So for instance, if we look at point A here, where Ella buys 10 units of good X and maybe 5 units of good Y. So let's see how that affects her budget. So if she buys 10 units of good X and the price of X is 5, and she buys 5 units of good Y and the price of Y is 10, this means that this is equal to her income. So this is represented on the budget line. This is bundle A. So if we move on to, say, bundle B has 4 units of good X and 8 units of good Y. So 4 units of good X, the price of X is 5, and 8 units of good Y, the price of Y is 10. So we have 20 plus 80 still gives us 100. Then if you move to bundle C, you can see that C has 16 units of good X at a price of 5 plus 2 units of good Y at a price of 10. So this is 80 plus 20, which is still 100. So immediately you can see that all points on the budget line are points that add up to Ella's income. So it means that anytime Ella buys any bundle on the budget line, she is spending all her income. Now let's note some things about this budget line. The first thing to note is what we call a feasible set. Any bundle on the budget line or below the budget line can be purchased because it involves an expenditure less than or equal to her income. So this collection of bundles that can be purchased are referred to as a feasible set. Let's look at an example of these feasible sets. So the first example is bundles A, bundles B, and bundle C. So we can see that these lie on the budget line B1. These can be purchased because given Ella's income and the prices of the goods, if Ella buys bundle A, she will exhaust all her income, which is 100, and bundle B will also exhaust her income, bundle C will also exhaust her income. So her total expenditure is exactly equal to her total income. So she can afford these bundles. Now, if we look at other bundles such as bundle E, bundle F, and bundle D, these are also feasible sets because they are within Ella's budget. So let's start with bundle D. So bundle D has 10 units of good X at a price of 5 plus 2 units of good Y at a price of 10. So this is 50 plus 20. So bundle D cost Ella 70. Bundle E contains 4 units of good X at a price of 5 plus 5 units of good Y at a price of 10. Now this is 20 plus 50, which is also 70. So it means if you draw another budget, you're going to see that E and D are going to lie on the same budget line because the total income spent on these two bundles is exactly the same. Now let's look at bundle F. So bundle F has 4 units of good X at a price of 5 and 2 units of good Y at a price of 10. So this is 20 plus 20, which is equal to 40. So Ella is spending £40 if she consumes bundle F. What we're saying here is if you draw Ella's budget as this, which is B1, any point in this shaded area or on the budget line itself is what we call the feasible set because they can be purchased by Ella given the income that she gets and the prices of the good. Now the next thing is any point above B1 is not feasible because it involves an expenditure that is greater than Ella's income. So let's look at an example of this and consider bundle H and bundle J. We can see that bundle H has 10 units of good X at a price of 5 and 15 units of good Y at a price of 10. So this gives us 200. And then bundle J has 16 units of good X at a price of 5 and 12 units of good Y at a price of 10. So this also gives us 200. So what this means is that Ella has an income of £100 per week, but bundle H cost Ella £200 and bundle J cost Ella £200. So these two bundles are not feasible because given Ella's income and the prices of the goods, she cannot buy bundle H and bundle G. So any bundle that is not affordable, given the income and the price, is not a feasible set. So let's move on to the slope of the budget line. So the slope of the budget line can be represented by the price of good X divided by the price of good Y. Now we have a negative here, and this is because on a particular budget line, for instance, P1, the prices are fixed and the income that the consumer also gets is fixed. So in our example, Ella has £100 of income per week. The price of good X was 5, and the price of good Y is 10. So if Ella starts from point A on this curve, and Ella wants to consume more of good X, which will move her to point B, because her income is fixed and the prices have not changed. For her to be able to consume more of good X, she has to give up some of good Y. So this is like a negative relationship or some trade-off between the two goods. So that is why the slope of the budget line is negative. It simply tells us that for you to consume more of one good, given your fixed income and the price of the good, you have to decrease the amount of money that you spend on the other good. So the slope is also the opportunity cost of consuming 1 unit of a good. In this case, since the price of rice, which is good X, is 5, and the price of pasta, which is good Y, is 10, we can rewrite the slope as minus 5, which is the price of good X, and divided by 10, which is the price of good Y. So in our example, the slope is simply 0.5. If we look at the price of rice, which is £5, and the price of pasta, which is £10, we can immediately see that rice is half as expensive as pasta. Anytime Ella wants an extra bowl of rice, she has to forgo half a bowl of pasta. So this is simply what the slope is telling us, that Ella trades pasta for rice at a rate of 0.5. This is similar to saying since pasta is twice as expensive as rice, anytime Ella does not buy pasta, she has extra £10, which can get her 2 bowls of rice. Now this is important because the slope will not be 0.5 if we consider rice as good Y and then pasta as good X. So to see this, if we consider rice as good Y now and pasta as good X, the slope now becomes the price of good X, which is pasta. So this is minus 10. And then rice is now good Y. The price of good Y is now 5. So this is going to be minus 2. When we are interpreting the slope, it's important to know that it's dependent on which good is good X and which good is good Y. So this is all that we have on the second part of our lesson on budget constraint. Our next lesson will be on how changes in income affect the budget constraint. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.